Hey everyone, let's write a story. So I'll console log and I'll type once upon a time, Aras, Haja and Charlou wanted to play football, but it was raining. Cool. And remember the semicolons at the end. So the area here where I've written my code, this is where I just write it. If I save the file, nothing will happen. It's not going to do anything useful. I need to actually execute this code or run the program to see what it does. So to do that, I'm going to press F5. And if you look at the bottom area down here, you're going to see that we get a message. So ignore the red text. Just look at the message. This is what running our program does. So let's write those words. When we program, we first write the code, then we execute, run the program or the code to see the results. But notice how down here, we don't see console log anymore. We just see the message. So as our computer is reading our code, it sees console log and it thinks, okay, so I just need to type to the screen whatever is written in here. So that's exactly what it does. It just types whatever we send to console log. Now, if you remember from the fundamentals class, you played a game where you gave instructions to a robot, so how it should walk. And the order in which you gave those instructions mattered. So if you told the person to first turn right and then go forward, they would end up in a different position than if you told them to walk forward and then turn right. And that's what's happening in our code as well. So if we type console log 1 and then we type console log 2, and remember the semicolons, we save this and then we run the code. You can see that first we get 1, then we get this one, and then we get 2. And we can actually see that. So Visual Studio Code has a useful feature. There are some red dots here, and you can actually press one of those red dots, so see how it highlighted. And if I press F5 now, it's gonna stop at that line. So it's gonna let us see how the computer is reading the code. Okay, so I can see that there's this yellow line here, and we don't actually see anything down here yet because our computer is still at this line. It hasn't read it yet. Now if I press this button here to go forward one line, now we can see that our program executes the first line. Okay, so we see whatever's in this console log. Now it's at the second line. We press the button again, and now we see our story here. Now it's at the third line. We press this button again, and finally we see the 2 output. Console log is very useful because it makes our program actually do something. It makes it write text. If I delete all the console logs from my code and then I press F5, we're not going to see anything. Let's declare a variable now. I'll call it story, and it's going to contain our story again. So once upon a time, Aras, Haja, and Charlou wanted to play football, but it was raining. Let's run the program now. Again, we get nothing, but we have code here. What's the deal? Well, it turns out that just declaring a variable doesn't really do anything. Variables are only useful when we use them. Let's use console log because we saw how useful console log is, and let's give it our story variable. Okay, so if we press F5 now we're gonna get our story again. So what's happening here is that our program reads our first line. It sees that, we're declaring a variable called story, and we're assigning it this value, and it goes, okay, cool. If sometime later I'm gonna see that you're using this variable, I'm gonna know what it refers to. So that's what happens. We get to line 3 and the computer sees, okay, I need to write something on the screen. What is it that I'm gonna write? Well, I'm gonna write whatever is in this story variable. And what's in the story variable? It's this thing. Okay, so that's why we get this on the screen. But let's rewind a bit. It's really important to remember the language of what we just did. Declaring a variable, to declare a variable, means to write the word let followed by our variable name, right? This is what declaring a variable is. Now, once we declare a variable, we can assign a value to our variable. Yeah, so what assigning a value means is writing the equal sign and then writing something in here. Yeah, so this part is declaring the variable, this part is assigning a value to it. Now let's go back here and use our variable again, so story, but this time let's give it a different value. Now what do you think we're gonna get on the screen when I run this? Think for a few seconds, try to answer. Okay, do you have an answer in your head? Okay, let's try this. Let's press F5. Pum pum pum, we get some different story in here. Was that expected? Well, let's see what's happening in here. Our program sees that we're declaring a variable called story, we're assigning it this value. And it goes, okay, cool. If I ever see story again, I'm gonna know it has this value. But then on the next line, we're assigning a brand new value to our previous variable. So now our program totally forgets any value that was in here, and it's gonna remember this as its value. So then when we get to line 3, it's gonna go, okay, what is the last value that was assigned to story? Well, it was actually this one. And this is the only thing that's gonna print. Okay, pause the video here, look at this thing, try to read through it, and really understand what's happening. So let's write some things in here. We can only declare a variable once, but we can assign values to it as many times as we want. So you can kind of think about this as you going to Amazon and buying a box, right? You can buy a box once, but then once you receive the box, you can keep putting things into it, taking things out, putting different things, right? So you can keep reusing the box. That's how you can think about variables. You declare a variable once, right? So you buy the box once. But then once you have the variable, once you receive the box, you can assign as many values as you want to your variable. You can put as many things as you want in the box. So let's do a quick exercise. I'm gonna write some lines in here. So I'm gonna declare a variable called story and I'll assign it this value. I'm gonna declare another variable called title of the story and I'll assign it this value. And now I'll assign a different value to my story variable. Okay, and finally, I'm gonna console log my variable. So pause the video here and these lines, so there are some problems with these lines. Some of them I've not written correctly, right? So first of all, I want you to think which lines are wrong, and then once you figure out which lines are wrong, I want you to try and read out loud what's happening in here using the sentences that we've just learned, declaring a variable and assigning a value to a variable. So pause the video now, and then I'll continue talking. Okay, cool. Did you have a look? Are you ready? So the first problem in here is this line. We've already declared the story variable up here, so we can't redeclare it again down here. So that's why I need to remove the let. Yeah? So now, instead of declaring story, on this line, we're just assigning a different value to it. Now, what about this line? Well, this line has a spelling mistake. So I meant to declare the variable title, but instead of writing let, I wrote lt. So we need to fix that and add the in there, right? You need to spell the words correctly for JavaScript to work. You need to use let when declaring a variable. And finally, on this line, we're just assigning a different value to our story. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen now when we run this? What's going to get console logged here, and what is going to get console logged here? Let's try it out. Press F5. So we get final story version promise, which is correct because it's the last value that we assign to story. But then when it gets to this line, we get a weird red error here, which says TITL is not defined. And if we look back up here, we see that, oh, our variable name is actually called title with an E at the end. So it's important that when you use variables, you spell them correctly. So if we add the E back in here, and then we run this, we can see final story version promise, which is great. And then we see the value that was last assigned to title, which is my amazing story. Pause the video here, make sure you read through these lines and you understand exactly why we see these two messages on here. So let's try out something now. Let's see, what if we put quotes around these? What do you think is going to happen if I press F5? Will nothing happen? Like, will the same things be console logged here? Or do you think we're going to see something else? Let's press F5. Oh, we see story and title, right? Why is that? Console log, if it sees anything in quotes in here, it's just gonna write whatever is between the quotes, right? It's not even gonna think that it might be a variable. Okay? While if it doesn't have quotes and it sees a word here without quotes, the first thought is gonna be, oh, this must be a variable that we've declared somewhere up here, right? So it's gonna go look for whatever value it has. So now if we remove the quotes from here and we press F5, it's actually gonna see that it's a variable because it doesn't have quotes. It's gonna look at the last value it was assigned to the variable, and it's just gonna show us that value. While when it gets here, it's gonna see that, oh, this has quotes, so I'm not even gonna bother searching if it's a variable. I'm just gonna show you whatever is between the quotes. So it shows us title. Okay? Again, make sure you understand that difference. Pause the video here if you don't. Copy this code here in your own VS Code and try to add quotes, remove quotes, see what happens. Okay, so if I remove this again and I press F5, we're gonna go back to seeing our title and our story. Awesome. Another thing you might forget to do is, what if we remove the quotes from here? Well, if I press F5 now, so you're gonna see some red lines in here, but we're also gonna see a big error in here. And the same thing happens. JavaScript is gonna expect that all of these things are variables now, and it's gonna go and look for them, and it's not gonna find them. Okay, so it's really important to remember whether you're trying to use a variable or you're just writing a piece of text. If you're just writing a piece of text, it needs to have quotes. Yeah? We've actually learned what this is called. Something that is between quotes is called a string. Okay, so let's write this here. A string is a sentence or a word between quotes. Yeah? Anything that has quotes is a string. What other values can we have? Well, we can have numbers, right? So age is a number, and numbers don't need quotes. Okay, so this, if I console log age now, and I press F5, we're gonna see 25 first, which is the age. Then we're gonna see our story, and then we're gonna see our story title. Numbers are great because you can add them. So I can do 20, instead of 25, I can do 20 plus 5. So now if I press F5, I'm gonna see 25 again. If I do 20 plus 7, and I press F5, I'm gonna see 27. You can do the same things with strings. So here, I can actually take this and break it into two strings, two separate strings. So I can write some quotes here. So this is going to be my first string because it has opening quotes and closing quotes. And I can do plus, and then I can write some more. I can add some quotes between this one. So now I actually have two strings. The first one, because it's between quotes, the plus sign, which tells us I can add them, and then another string between quotes. Okay, so now if I press F5, I'm gonna get the exact same thing in here as I did before. So remember that you can add numbers. So if you add numbers, it's actually gonna do the math and it's gonna add this one plus this one, 27. While with strings, if you add two strings together, it's just gonna put them right next to each other. So let's use this. I'll delete all of this and I'll move the story a bit lower. And let me actually declare some variables, some new variables. I'll declare one called person1 and I'll assign it the value Aras. I'll declare another variable called person2 and I'll assign it the name Haja. And I'll declare another variable called person3 and I'll assign it the value Charlu. I'll declare a variable called activity and it's gonna be play football. And I'll declare another string called cancellation. I'll declare another variable called cancellation reason and it was gonna be it was raining. Okay, so instead of writing out my full story directly, let me assemble it by combining all of these variables, right? Plus strings. So as we did before, I'm gonna add some quotes to this one. So now this is its own string. I'll remove Aras from here and instead I'll use the plus sign and use whatever value is inside the variable person1. I'll do another plus sign, person2, I'll do another plus sign, person3, right? So now we can get rid of Haja and Charlu, and I'll use the plus sign again, and I'll make wanted2 into its own string, yeah? And I'll do another plus sign, and instead of play football, I will just use my activity variable. So I will use whatever value is assigned to this one. And now I'll do another plus sign and I'll make the but into a string and I'll use the plus sign, and finally I'll use the cancellation reason variable, so whatever value in this one. Okay, so now instead of having that really long story, I've assembled it by combining some strings plus some variables plus some other strings plus some other variables plus some other strings. Yeah, so let's press F5 now and we can see nothing happens. Well, that's because we only have variables on here, and as we've seen, variables don't really do anything on their own. We need to actually use them. So I will need to type console.log and let us console.log the story. Let us write to the screen whatever value is in story. Okay, so now if I press F5, we're gonna get a story, right? So it's gonna say, once upon a time, Aras, Haja, and Charlu wanted to play football, but it was raining. So you can see that we combined them okay, they're in the correct order, but some spaces are missing. Okay, so let's actually try and add some spaces in here. So I'll add one after Aras, I'll add one after Haja, one after Charlu. I'll add a space before play football, after play football. I'll add a space before cancellation reason. So after cancellation reason, I'll save this. And now if you run it, we'll see once upon a time, Aras, Haja, and Charlu wanted to play football, but it was raining. Cool. So we've assembled our story again using, so this is really interesting because Now we're using strings plus some variables, plus other variables, plus some strings. We're creating a brand new, we're combining them together. We're combining them together into a new value, and we're assigning whatever value comes out of this combination to our story variable that we've declared here. And then we're console logging that variable. And that's why we can see the complete story. And the reason variables are so useful is because now we don't even have to look at this anymore, at the complete story. If we wanted to swap out different characters in our story, we can just change the values of these variables, right? So let's say Aras can't make it anymore, right? He can't make it in their story anymore. And instead, Astrid is gonna join. Yeah? So now if we save this and press F5, now we can see that we have a new story with Astrid now in the picture instead of Aras. Let's change the activity. Instead of playing football, Astrid likes doing push-ups. So the activity will be do push-ups. And then let's say it wasn't raining, but coronavirus happened. So if we save this, we now see a brand new story. Once upon a time, Astrid, Haja, and Charlou wanted to do push-ups, but coronavirus happened. Okay? So you can see how easy it is to suddenly change our story and affect different parts of our story because we're using variables. And that's another reason why thinking really well about how you name your variables is really important. Because now we don't even have to know how this is used or where it goes in the story. We'll know that if we change the value of this, it's gonna affect the cancellation reason in the story. And we'll also know that if we replace Charlou in here, we're gonna replace the third person in the story, right? So that's why it was really important that we gave them correct names. Okay, so I actually missed something. We also have another thing in here. So we talked about strings and then we talked about numbers. Numbers is just a number without quotes. Okay? What else have we learned? We learned that naming variables is really important. We've also learned that we can add two strings together. We also learned that just declaring a variable doesn't do anything. We need to use it somewhere, maybe with console.log. We also learned that using quotes is important when writing a string, but when we write a variable, make sure to don't use quotes, not use quotes. Okay, now in the class, you also learned about const. Okay, so instead of let, you can also use const to declare a variable. I'm not gonna talk about the differences between let and const. If you understand what const does, that is amazing because it's gonna be very useful. Okay? But for now, while we are still learning these, don't focus too much on understanding the difference between let and const. I promise you that if from now on for the rest of the course, you declare all of your variables using just let and you never use const, you're not gonna have any problems. Everything is still gonna work. Later on, you're gonna understand why const is useful. But for now, if you're struggling to understand why it is useful, don't panic, don't worry, just keep using let. And once you understand how to use variables, what the difference between declaring a variable and assigning a value to it is, what console.log does, how you can combine strings using the plus sign, once you understand all of that, then maybe go and ask a mentor about how const works. But it's not that important for now. Okay, cool. Now let's switch gears a bit and look at our B here. You worked on this before, right? So the way functions worked here is they allowed us to build these set of instructions, and then we can just reuse that function as many times as possible. So let me actually, let's run just the function and see what it does. So now you'll see that if we, let's call this function twice now. Okay, let's see what happens then. It's gonna run through those, and then it's gonna do those again. Instead of copying these instructions over and over, we can just use this function twice, right? So this looks a lot nicer. It helps us use a lot less blocks in here. And finally, if we want the bee to move forward one more step, and then we want to grab the nectar. Okay, so this is actually the fourth puzzle, and I'll post a link to it here so you can go and play with it on your own time, right? I'm gonna post all of these notes. But let's try and run the program now. So if I press run, the bee will execute the function again, move forward, execute the function again, and eat all the nectars. So let's go and write this in our program. So if you go to the puzzle here, you can see there's a button here called show code. Okay, so that's gonna transform all of our blocks into some actual code. So I'll write a function called move and get nectar, and I will console log the values moves forward. I'll copy this and I'll console log the value turns right, and I'll just say for now, just to make it a bit shorter, I'll say get nectar, right? So I'm basically giving the bee some instructions, okay? And I created a function. Awesome. So let's try and run this. Let's see what happens. I run it, nothing happened. It turns out that when you declare a function, you actually need to call it for it to do something useful. So I will just copy the name of this function, and the way you call it is you open and close parentheses, right? So declaring a function means just with variables, we have to write the let keyword before them. With functions, to declare them, we need to write the function keyword before them, then the name of the function, then we open and close parentheses, and then we open a curly bracket. That is really important. And then we put all the code that we want to run in here, and then we close the curly bracket. Okay? And calling a function means to use the function's name, but directly open and close parentheses after it. That is going to call our function. So if we save this and press F5, we can see that our bee moves forward, turns right, gets nectar. Okay? So, but why did we use the function in the first place? Well, we used it because it allows us to easily repeat these instructions without writing them over and over again. So now, if I want to repeat these instructions again, the same way we did in our puzzle, I can just copy this a few times here. So I can copy it 3 times. And now if I press F5, we're going to see that the bee moves forward, turns right, and gets the nectar once, moves forward, turns right, and gets the nectar twice, and does the same thing 3 times. Okay? And we can add some console log statements between these. So I can make up a story, and I can go console log, the bee lands on the flowers. Okay? And now here I can say the bee now rests a bit. Okay? So now what's going to happen is our program will see that we're just declaring a function, right? So it's not even going to care what's in the function. It's going to go, cool, you are declaring a function called move and get nectar. If I ever see it again later, then I'm going to go back to it. But for now, since we're just declaring it, I'm going to ignore it. Then it's going to get to this line, and it's going to write out the message to the screen. Then it's going to get to this line and it's going to go, oh, we're calling a function. Let's see if it's been declared before. And it's go, ah, yes, it's been declared up here. Let me actually run the code that it's inside of it, right? So then this will run, okay? Then we're going to go to this line and this message will run. And then it's going to go and run this function 2 more times. So if we press F5, we're going to see bee lands on the flower, and then the bee moves forward, turns right, gets nectar. The bee now rests a bit, and then it moves forward, right, gets nectar, moves forward, right, and gets nectar again. Pause the video now and look over this if it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, let's add a red dot on here on the first line and see how the program actually runs for the code, right? So I'm going to press F5 and we're going to see that immediately it jumps over the function and it gets to this line, right? So straight from the beginning, it completely ignored the function. It gets to this line. It's going to see that there's a console log in there, so it's going to show what message is in the console log. And then it gets to this function, and now, if we press the second button here, step into, we're going to see that it goes in the function, okay? And now it's going to start showing all of the messages in the function, yeah? Now it moves on to this line. It sees another console log. It's going to output that message, and then it's going to get to this function again. So it's going to go again through the lines in the function. And then finally, it's going to get to the last line where we're calling the function. Again, it's going to go in the function, go through the lines in the function one by one, and write the messages down here. And finally, the program is going to finish. Go back over this section a few times and look at how the code is executing. Try to understand how our program is reading the code. Otherwise, let's write what we've learned about functions. So to declare a function, we need to write the function keyword followed by our function name. And again, this can be whatever thing we want. This always has to be function. Open and close parentheses, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, and then write your code here. To call a function, it means to use the function name, right? So our function name, and then open and close parentheses and semicolon. This is calling a function. What if we want to make a program that can tell the story of different bees? I'm going to write a function called tellStory. Okay, first of all, so let me just put everything inside the function. So I'll declare a function called tellStory. I'll copy all of this, move it inside a function, and let's pause here for a bit. If I press F5 now, what do you think is going to get printed to the screen? Let's press F5, we get nothing. And that is because we have two functions, but none of them ever get called, right? So our program will get to this function, we'll see, oh yeah, we're declaring a function, cool, if we ever need to use it later, I'll remember where it is. And then it gets to the second function, it sees, ah, cool, well, we're declaring a second function. If I see it again, I'm gonna know what it is. But then it gets to the end of our program and it sees, you've not actually used any of the functions. I'm just gonna finish. Yeah, so for our program to work, we actually need to call our tellStory function. So to call it, I'll write the name, open and close parentheses. So now our program will actually get here and it will see that, oh, nice, you're calling the function. Let me see what it does. And it's going to start executing the function. So if I press F5, we're going to see our program runs fine again. Yeah. Again, I'm not going to go through how this runs again. Pause the video and think about, if you don't understand why this is, why you get this text, try to run through the program in your head. what if, let's say instead of any normal B, let's say we want to separate our strings again using the trick that we learned before. So I'm just going to use quotes, and here I'm just going to use a variable name, the story of, and then whatever B name we want, and then that lands on the flowers, right? So where is this name actually going to come from? Well, one really nice thing about functions is that you can customize them. You can make them do different things. So how do you make them do different things? Well, they accept parameters. So we can actually tell it that our function will accept different values in here. And the value that it's going to accept is it's going to be the name of the B, and then it's going to use that value internally right here. When we call it, that's when we can give it whatever value we want for this one. So we can give it the name. Let's say our B will be called Lisa the B. Okay. So if I press F5 now, we're gonna see the story of Lisa the bee that lands on the flowers. And then the story goes on, okay, with what Lisa the bee does. What's really nice about this is now we can generate a brand new story with Bob the bee. Yeah, so now if we press F5, we're gonna get two stories now. So we're gonna get the story of Lisa first that lands on the flowers, right, and does all of these things. But then we're gonna get the story of Bob the bee that lands on the flowers and does the same things. Yeah? So what's happening here is that we're calling the same function and we pass it this value, right? We pass it the string value, Lisa the bee, and then our function is gonna get called and it's gonna receive the value Lisa the bee in here, and it's gonna replace whatever is in B name with whatever value it received here. So think back to the earlier exercise. Think back to how we assembled that story with Haja and Charlou playing football. So remember how we were composing variables. We were adding strings to variables to some other strings. And eventually we console logged that whole thing. This is working in the same way. Instead of variables, this will actually be a parameter to the function. Yeah, so let's write that here. Functions accept parameters, right? Another word for parameters is arguments, right? Or inputs. So if you ever see, so we're going to try and use this word from now on. But if you ever see these other two words, just know they're the same thing. Okay, so functions accept parameters, and you can send parameters to functions when calling them. So you can do this like my function some value. And the way this function will accept parameters is it will be function, my function, because we're declaring it, and it will be parameter 1 and then some code that uses parameter 1. So these are functions that actually do something. So they console log some value. So when you call them, you get a story back. The other type of function you can have is a function that doesn't really do anything on its own, but it gives you a value back. So for example, I can have a function that creates a story title and it accepts a main character as its parameter, and it's going to return us a value. So what this function will return is it will go the story of plus whatever value it got for the main character. Okay, so what does this return thing actually do? Well, let's go back here. So let's copy the name and use it inside our tell story function. So instead of this part, I can remove it and I can call my story title function, and I'll call it because I use the parentheses, and I will pass it the name of our main character, right? And then I'll do plus this other string. So what JavaScript will do is it will call this function, it's gonna pass it whatever value we had for the b name, it's gonna get to here, and it's gonna combine this first string with whatever value it got for the main character, and out of it will come the story of Lisa or the story of Bob, right? So this is gonna get replaced in here. So let me call that. So now we can see that it still works. So we get the story of Lisa the bee, okay? If we modify this, so we can tell it, we can tell it the very happy story of whatever main character is in our story. So if we execute this, we're now gonna get the very happy story of Lisa the bee that lands on the flowers, and the very happy story of Bob the bee that lands on the flowers. We're gonna keep using these, right? So don't worry if this return thing doesn't really make sense. What I'm hoping is that you can understand why we need functions. We need functions because we want to group code together so we can execute it more than one time later. And then we can make functions even more useful because we can pass them parameters and make them do different things depending on what parameters and what values they receive in here.